We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the C Block of Weed Talk News. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young in Massachusetts. You know, as the fight to end cannabis prohibition continues here in the United States, the rest of the world is starting to move in the same direction. Others, like Italy, however, are going in the opposite direction. We'll start in Japan, where for 75 years cannabis has been on the prohibited list, but that is changing now. Kind of. It was in November last year that the prohibition bill in Japan was deemed ready to be reformed. Now a public comment period in that country will begin, going on for the month of June. Sound familiar? Japan already has a vibrant market for CBD, but now they may make an exception to increase THC content to 0.3%. They also are considering becoming the first country in the world to approve adding CBD into foods. This is in stark contrast to Italy, which is now considering banning the use of CBD in all products. A controversial security bill is being debated now in that country that would basically end the fledgling Italian CBD market because it would ban, quote, the import, processing, possession, transfer, distribution, trade, and dispatch delivery, and of course sale to the public for any consumption in any form, even with products with zero THC, unquote. In the UK, a new group has formed that could produce that country's first strategy for cannabinoid research and development. That group, believe it or not, is called the UK Cannabinoid Research and Development Group and will present their strategy to the Parliament in July. So when you look at other countries' laws and regulations about cannabis, you should feel a lot better about the reform movement here in the United States. And then, of course, there is Canada, which is still the first G7 country to legalize the plant medicine. And that's why we have Debi Facey reporting from that country every week.
This is Debi Facey with the Canadian Strain of the Week. So in Canada, what we have found is a research that was done back in 1987 that has now come back to light, which is a viroid by the name of HLVD, and it is a contamination that is post-harvesting. So this is something that actually does attach to the tools, the water, and the seeds, despite how hard or how much the researchers, or sorry to say the LPs, try to actually detain their surfaces and their material and equipment. It's due to the fact that these certain strains by the name of Gelato 33, Motorhead, and Oreos carry this viroid that stunts its growth and also contaminates its surroundings. This is something that in BC, Vancouver, they are doing some research and they have found that this is something that is also harming us here in Canada, but also in the States and Europe. This viroid hasn't necessarily been too delved into, but this is something now that we are finding within some of our strains. And I hope to be able to bring more information to you, especially as we now all become a little bit more closer to that full-fledged legalization. Once again, this is Debi Facey with the Canadian Strains Week. Peace.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Cannabis technology firm Agrify said it regained compliance with NASDAQ's stock listing rules after converting $13.8 million of debt to equity. Two entities linked to CEO Raymond Chang, CP Acquisitions, and GIC Acquisition completed the conversion on May 22nd. Let's see how this affects the stock chart. It's trading around 29 cents, and it appears to be pulling back some. I'll be keeping an eye on it because I'm interested to see if it can get moving in the right direction to maintain this compliance. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
Ever since Ohio became the 24th state in the nation to legalize adult use of cannabis, it's just been a matter of time before half of the 50 states in the country will legalize an adult use market for cannabis. Which state will that be, you ask? Well, political leaders in Pennsylvania make a lot of noise about legalization, but not much else happens in that state. Since earlier in the year, Hawaii made some progress in their legislature initiative, but tabled it after considering the costs of rebuilding after those devastating fires last year. Now, call me crazy, but maybe they should think about using industrial hemp when they rebuild and fund it through, I don't know, a new legal adult use market. Amazingly, it now seems like it could be the live, free, or die state of New Hampshire that could be the 25th state. That is the only state in New England that does not have a legal market for adult use, but only a small medicinal program. Tim Egan is a former representative in the House of Representatives in New Hampshire, and he's been explaining how politics works in that state. He's also been spearheading the movement for a legal adult use market. Now, along with Darrell Eames, they head up the New Hampshire Cannabis Association. Legalization bills have been bouncing back and forth in committees in both the Senate and the House in New Hampshire. And the governor there, Chris Sununu, has urged amendments to the bills in order to pave the way for legal state-run dispensaries in that state. Now, the latest bill is in its final stages. Tim and I talked this week about what's next and how soon it will be before weed is legal in New Hampshire.
You know, Jimmy, for 4.5 years, I've been involved in trying to legalize cannabis. And at the end of the day, that's been it for me, legalization, because legalization and regulation creates safety in so many different ways, how it's grown, how people get it, how it's packaged, you know what you're getting, you know who's getting the money from it. And so what I've been doing is beating that drum for the last year with 2 members of the House of Representatives. And the Senate has finally realized, the 9 of the 10 Democrats said, we got to stop sending people to jail for this. That is legal in 24 other states. We have to be able to respect that there's 70% of the, over 70% of the state wants this as a product, recreational. We already have existing medicinal that will roll into this program. And then 5 Republicans who, I'll give one nod to the libertarian mindset of people, like they're following up on live free or die. People should have access to it. People should be able to profit from it. And what happened was sort of this meeting of the minds for the Senate to say, well, we like this bill that came over from the House, but we don't love it. So we're going to reconfigure it a little bit. I called it for a while a bit of a Frankenstein bill, and it is, but it is legalization, a path to legalization. And then, like any good person that understands government and politics, you do, I do, especially around the cannabis world, laws change all the time, federally, state-wise, so you can change the laws. So the logic is, let's see if we can get this bill passed and then worry about fixing it later. But basically, it was a meeting of the minds of libertarian Republicans and Democrats who are focused on social impact, and they passed it. And what was, I think, of the most interesting is New Hampshire has to go through 2 committees on either side, law-wise and finance-wise. And when it went through the second committee in the Senate Finance, we were worried that it was more prohibitionist than pro. But one of the leading prohibitionists, the Senate president, who added a lot of these amendments to this bill, actually voted for it. So it came out of Senate Finance back to the Senate floor, ought to pass, which is a great recommendation as opposed to having to undo a recommendation not to pass. Then you have to have a new motion. So here we are looking at the House having to concur, which means, hey, the bill that we agreed to, we sent you to the Senate, you made some changes, we're okay with those changes when it comes back. That's going on right now.
Is there a time frame on this? When are you expecting it to maybe happen?
So I think the committee chair, John Hunt, the chair of Commerce, who oversees this bill, is putting it up for concurrence and sort of taking his chances that, folks who are in favor of legalization in general will say, this is our time in the sun.
One of the most important developments in the new legal cannabis markets around the country is the software programs that track the products from seed to sale. The biggest one in the U.S. is Metric, and that is used in 23 of the 24 legal adult use states. In Michigan, that state recently renewed their annual agreement with Metric, and according to MJ Biz Daily, is now serving 300,000 users and 39,000 licensed cannabis operators. In other cannabis news out of Michigan, sales in the month of April were up by 9% over March, but those sales brought in, believe it or not, 3.5% less cash as prices and profit margins continue to shrink. Still, overall sales in Michigan are up 21% over last year. Missouri sales continue to thrive, and reports that our correspondent there, Brandon Jones, is responsible for that personally has not been proven correct. What is correct, however, is that Brandon Jones and Bailey Hill will be launching a podcast on the PCM network very soon. In the meantime, here's Brandon's report this week from the Show Me State of Missouri.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report, where we talk news. And half, that might be a little stretch, but yeah, I do like to consume cannabis, and I am known for the never-ending blunt. If you saw me at Mocana Fest this weekend down at the Lakes of the Ozarks, you might have been able to see that happen. But yes, there is lots of things going on here in Missouri, lots of different activities. Like I said, I was out at the Lake of the Ozarks for Mocana Fest 9. So this thing has happened at the Ozarks, where they take over an entire hotel. They have vendors throughout, and you can actually consume throughout the entire hotel, your lobby, the rooms, anywhere you're walking around. And then they take over the pool party. And we were lucky enough to have Dab Stars fly in, and I got to be on stage with them at 420 doing a huge giveaway, about $5,000 worth of merchandise and products to just whoever came to see the event. And then it took over the pool party, which was a blast. Things that are going on, and not such a great thing when we do talk about sales here, are taxes. So the second judge here in the state of Missouri has agreed or to allow the ability for each county to now stack sales tax on top of cannabis sales at dispensaries inside their specific county. So it is a specific county ordinance that is in the law that specific county can either add taxes or not. They have that ability to, and now the judges are going in and giving out decisions. So that's the second judge here in the county now that is allowed for stacking taxes on cannabis sales at the dispensaries. So we already know prices, are what they are, and we always wish they could be less. And now they're finding another way to make the prices a little bit higher at the dispensary. So hopefully that doesn't catch on and keep going at every county. But we understand that, some counties do need a little bit things to go back into the stuff, and hopefully cannabis can help. But again, I'm Brandon Jones with the B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report. We talk news, stay medicated and educated. Have a great week.
As always, cannabis legalization is a hot topic. Here with more on that subject are Thomas Howards and Miggy 420 from Cannabis Legalization News.
That's the thing I don't understand. I want to be clear. I understand why, from an economic purpose, like as an operator, when you look at states like Michigan, Oklahoma, and Oregon, why you wouldn't want that as an operator. But I guess it makes economic sense to me, I guess is what I'm saying. And if I were in your shoes, I would think the same thing. But I guess what I always try to ask people is like, what makes cannabis any different from, and I'm actually kind of stealing a point that you still taught me, because I credit you for radicalizing me. What makes cannabis any different from restaurants? We accept the fact that 80% go out of business in the first 5 years. Why are we so hell-bent on protecting cannabis operators?
Restaurants weren't illegal. Restaurants weren't illegal 5 years ago. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's the aspects of it where you go we protected alcohol as well when it became legal. And it took years and decades for it to open and change its market dynamics. So what's your policy goal here? Is your policy goal to be able to make stable revenues for the state and for the people that have the actual licenses that need to comply with those regulations? Or, so what are you really trying to do with your scheme that you have,
And that's where I feel like legalization diverged. I spoke to Representative Carol Ammons, and she said the grassroots got us here, and really all our problem was ever the rules, the fact that cannabis was illegal. And now that it's legal, we have all these different rules, and it's I didn't ask for all these rules. I have a problem with the rules,
But that's fine. But you're talking about selling a highly regulated drug. What whether like you have a personal relationship with it and you realize that a lot of that's bullshit, 85% of the American people don't realize that's bullshit. And so that to them, it's a drug, and they know it in a certain way. And so if your policy goal is like changing those things and getting to somewhere where it's going to be normalized, you have to figure out how you're going to regulate it. And it's going to be the most restricted during that interim period before it can get into more of an open but if it's just like owning a brewery, it would be more like owning a brewery or owning a distillery. Distilleries were restricted from ownership for many years.
And finally this week, the Flower Expo Business Trade Show will be taking place in Greenfield, Massachusetts this week. Last year's was a big success with hundreds of vendors and over 80% of the dispensaries in the state exhibiting in the fairgrounds in that western town in the Bay State. This year, it will be even bigger.
So you're going to see pretty much the vast majority of the Massachusetts cannabis industry. The way I like to describe it is it's very business focused. It is B2B, but we also have a great time. It's kind of equal parts, very effective trade show plus just fun festival atmosphere.
That's Wednesday, June 5th and Thursday, June 6th and June 6th. That just happens to be the same day that the NBA finals start with the Boston Celtics and Dallas Mavericks. See, everything always comes back to the sports calendar for this old guy, the old sports guy now turned weed guy. For Karen Black in Arizona and the entire Weed Talk News team, I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. And yes, Elena Pinto will be back next week.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.